This is Off Planet Radio.
We welcome you to the show. This is Randy Maugans, and this is Off Planet Radio. We're heading back into the deep dives with this show. Going to go into the classic ufology, I guess, would be a good way of explaining it. My guest today is with us from the west coast of the United States. He co-organized the 2023 Montauk Adventure Tour to assemble survivors of the Montauk Project for the 80th anniversary of the related Philadelphia experiment. He co-hosts the Disclosure Now YouTube channel with Archime Ra, with the mission of forcing the worldwide disclosure, exposure of secret space programs, military abduction programs, my labs, the real reality of ET contact, super soldier projects, and the like as a first step to bringing out our collective Star Trek future. He is the executive producer for the 2024 Full Disclosure Now conference at St. Pete Beach in Florida last July, and he's busily working on with his executive team to produce this year's 2025 event at the same time and place. Given the huge success of the inaugural conference via an ever-emerging and amazing community of friends and fellow starseeds, he is in contact with many different ETs and spiritual beings to advance the full disclosure movement. To the show today, I do welcome, with open arms, Brian Tseng. Welcome to the show, my brother.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. I especially love being on shows for the first time, and so thank you once again.
It is my pleasure. And where we're going to go today is, I hope we're going to take some deep dives, and I'm sure we will, because I've seen you before and you always produce. But a little bit of background on you and how you got into this particular venue.
Well, I have had a lifelong fascination with the topics of UFOs and ETs, the occult, supernatural, the paranormal, Bigfoot sightings to people astral projecting. And then when 9/11 happened, I'm a 1975 baby, and when 2001 9/11 happened, it took a couple years, especially for the information about Building 7 to come out, and that was a huge wake-up call. And I was doing a lot of community organizing work with physicians and things like that. And I've since taken my community organizing skills and some of the resources, the finances that my father, Jack Tseng, left to me, the eldest of three idiot sons. And for the last several years, I've been applying that to the full disclosure movement. And I've had some paranormal experiences of my own. And I'm told by many different people that I myself have been in this project or that project, including the Montauk Project. And but I myself have zero recall, zero memory. So I see myself more as a self-appointed organizer advocate for the full disclosure movement, whether or not I myself have been, in any of the programs and things like that.
Well, that's not a requirement. And everybody, if they're honest, has tuned into their own psychic key abilities. And the rest of the world is catching up with us, I hope. And that's kind of the point that I try to make to people, is that Much of our learned experience, the environment in which we live in, is largely the result of the enculturation that has occurred to us from childhood on up, and that the supernatural, so-called, is all around us, and that it is entrainment that has removed that it's placed a visual block. I call it specular blindness. That's the term that I'm using as I'm writing about this. So, you did the Montauk conference. What year was that, Brian?
Was a 2023 summer Montauk Adventure Tour because that's the 80th anniversary of the 1943 Philadelphia experiment on
Uh-huh.
August. And yeah, speaking of what you were saying, it's kind of like we all kind of come in as starseed children with our eyes open and, you know, understanding reincarnation and all this stuff, the beyond the veil is real. And then somewhere along the lines, that specular blindness takes place and we dive into the illusion. And then now it's like many of us for the last 10 plus years or so have been re-emerging from the illusion, and that was part of the experience that I think we all kind of maybe had to go through, and that it makes it even more real now to be on the other side of that.
First off, tell us a little bit about that Montauk. Did that occur at Montauk?
Well, what happened was the adventure tour was James Rink, Arkeem Ra, and a whole bunch of other Montauk survivors, people mostly who do have some level of recall, gathered about 20 of us or so for 5 days on the east end of Long Island. That's where
Okay,
Camp Hero is. That's the
right.
army base where the Montauk
Yes,
Project took place. And so it was kind of like, yeah, the Philadelphia experiment took place, I believe, at the port of Philadelphia, right?
right.
And the naval base there. But because it's interrelated, and we believe that when the USS Eldridge was warping around in time and space, it may have some ties. It may have jumped a bit to the north of Montauk Point itself, Oyster Point, I believe it
Oyster
is.
Point, yeah. Oyster
Yeah,
Bay.
yeah, Oyster Bay. It's like
Oyster
right
Bay,
there
Long
off of
Island. Yeah,
Montauk. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and so
That
we believe, yeah, we had people on a boat, a chartered boat, um, people, 8 people going around on August 12th, right around that Oyster Bay or Point area. And then we had people also around the Camp Hero area at the same time.
that boat wound up Norfolk, Virginia, as I recall, where it
Yes,
reappeared.
yeah, it's one of the places where apparently it
Yeah,
reappeared.
yeah.
Mhm.
So making the connection from Montauk to ufology is in a difficult leap to navigate. Um, the people that you found in this movement were not your normal daily walk type of people, or are they? Are
They
they?
are. They absolutely are. And, I can make the connection for ufology to the Montauk Project. Basically, when the US Navy and military realized that there was something to this Tesla technology, I mean, USS Eldridge had just disappeared and there were a whole bunch of sailors melted into the hull of the ship. Not
Hmm.
pretty. Okay. A lot of the scientists quit, resigned before and after that because of the toll on the sailors. Um, they realized, well, let's take this new experimental toy technology or Tesla technology and move it over to Brookhaven National Laboratory in the
Right.
center of Long Island. And then somewhere along the line, it looks like they took what's known as the Montauk trip chair, may have been a recovered pilot chair from one of the Roswell crash sites.
Uh-huh.
They ended up saying, well, instead of doing all this experimentation at Brookhaven National Lab, let's move a little further away from downtown Manhattan to the sleepy fishing village of Montauk at the time with the then decommissioned army base of Camp Hero. And that's where they did the Phoenix Project, also known as the Montauk Project, strapping children into the Montauk trip chair and then forcing them to open up portals in time and space and sending them through first to experiment and then to actually run time missions to put us on a negative timeline. A lot of this stuff that happens and where happened at at Camp Hero, the Montauk Project, at that one location. There are multiple, including New Orleans, underneath New Orleans and the Presidio, San Francisco, I'm
Yeah.
told.
Yeah.
Um, they were also linking up with the secret space programs, and that's because post World War II, the U.S. had been clued on to the fact that Germany really won World War II because of the space Nazis,
Because
and I can
there's,
go into that,
yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the man in the high castle
which is a real
kind of,
timeline.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
that's
It's a
that's a true
real,
timeline. Philip K. Dick was looking at other timelines, and his widow Tessa Dick can use help. She's online. Her PayPal's out there to help keep that Berkeley house that she once shared with Philip, and she herself, she's very deserving of any assistance out there.
let's shoot me some information. We'll put that up with the show notes.
Thank you,
Um,
Randy.
I've never made her acquaintance, but I've seen her around a little bit. Um, so the secret space program dates back to the post-World War II period with the Nazi technology, or
Exactly.
what Joseph Farrell's called the Nazi Bell.
The
He's called,
Glocken was one of the parts of it, and then there were the flying saucers with the Iron Cross on it, the Hanabu, and that was a lot of technology was telepathically given to Maria Orsic and her fellow Vrildamen, the beautiful
yep.
woman with the long hair. This was pre-Nazi Germany, was when they were first receiving this information, and they got scooped up by the Black Sun Society of the occult wing, top leadership of Hitler's inner circles that were traveling around the world trying to find entrances to inner Earth, like in Tibet, and the Spear of Destiny and relics
Hmm.
to
Hmm.
help give them any edge to win World War II, which they did.
So we have a pre-World War II program that is running still. It makes me wonder about Space Force, which was brought forward in the first Trump administration back in late in Trump's term. They announced Space Force, which seems kind of redundant given that the Air Force and the Navy. No, do
No, the
ex
reason my understanding is that Space Force is Secret Space Program Light, trying to
right.
introduce the idea to civilians and also try to rein in the secret space programs by putting in more of a front-facing military civilian branch. Because when you look at it, the secret space programs are way beyond, and also they for the most part they've been under the purview, I understand, of the U.S. Navy. The time
Right,
travel stuff
right.
has been
Yeah,
the Air Force.
yeah, yeah. The Navy, oddly enough, is in control of almost all of that.
Well, I can explain why.
Okay.
Per the research of Michael Sala, and I believe it's in the testimony of William Tompkins, who's now gone. Um,
Mhm.
uh, he was the one who wrote, I believe, Selected by Extraterrestrials. It's his testimony book, one of. He says that in the early days of the secret space program, when they realized they're going to be sending military personnel, they weren't sure which branch was going to lead yet into space. Okay, was it going to be the Air Force or the Navy were the top two contenders? And the logic was that when Air Force personnel are on like a ship, they're there kind of like to fly the planes and do the missions and then come back to shore and their lives. Navy people, they consider their ship their home. And when you got people out there in space, that idea for especially for captains and admirals and that ocean going, seafaring type mentality is much better suited for what service should be in charge of the space programs. That's why they gave it to the Navy.
So the secret space program takes us into a place where we start to talk about breakaway civilization and the technology, the economy, the abductions. What have your abductees told you about the breakaway civilization?
Well, um, people like John Whitberg, who was in Project Ibis as well as at the Montauk Project, he testifies that the German SSP, and Penny Bradley might also agree to this, may number as many as 1 million human beings strong out there amongst the stars. A big reason why is because they've used a lot of dirty tricks, including time travel and the abuse of stargates to take over beautiful worlds that would have been dominated and colonized or predominantly colon or lived on by other species who would rightfully be there.
So it was a hostile takeover.
Very much so. Exactly, maybe not exactly, but pretty much is what's depicted in Avatar.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
It's a Wild West, and another world, Kepler 22b is got a lot of unobtainium on it, and they want to get it. True
So
story.
we're back to Star Trek.
Yes.
Yeah. We've been in this slow drip disclosure for my entire life, your entire life. So in a way, we've kind of been primed to begin to accept this within the collective consciousness. So why the knuckle dragging on the part of so-called official disclosure?
Excellent question, Randy. So, Star Trek was channeled information to, I forget the name of the
Nine.
psychic. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And Nine was channeling that information to some woman, I believe, in Berkeley in the 60s or 50s.
Hmm.
And Gene Roddenberry got to participate and sit in on those sessions. And he makes, I think he's pretty open and honest about that, or was before he died. The reason why all the knuckle dragging is because the powers that be this whole time have been doing dirty dealing with the negative agenda aliens, or the NAA, service to self ETs, to dominate human society here on the surface of the planet and continue to run us as a prison planet, loosh breeding farm. And the elite thought that they were going to benefit by selling the rest of us out. And part of their agreements, I believe the 1954 Greada Treaty may have included this clause,
The
was that they would not,
abductions.
yeah, not only were their abductions were to a certain limited quote unquote amount permissible, as long as they reported on how many people were being taken and the what type of limited experimentation was being conducted, but they would also keep all knowledge of extraterrestrial existence secret from humanity. Because the deal is that the Greada Treaty was signed behind the back of President Dwight Eisenhower with the negative ETs, the Zeta Reticulans, who were actually the slaves and proxies of the negative Draco reptilians.
Okay. So
And then that's
in
why they're in the secret space programs, why they figure so much in the SSP, these Greys and Dracos.
So the greats strike me as being sort of this robotic kind of class of beings. That's my experience. And we would say that they're sentient, intelligent, but highly unempathic would be the term I would use to describe them in terms of being able to resonate with an emotional frequency.
So that's one major branch of the Greys, but that's by far not all branches.
Okay.
You got Greys who are more hive mind telepathic, and then there's maybe they're hive minded, but they're more have individual,
Yep.
individuated personalities. There's some where they're actually would be considered quote unquote flesh and blood biological beings, even though they're highly genetically altered. And then there are others where they're more bio robotic sleeves that are kind of like drone bodies that they can inhabit. They're the consciousness. But if you send that drone body into a craft and through a wormhole and it crashes and that drone body dies, the original consciousness can come back to an original biological body. So you've got the range when it comes to grays of humans we've encountered, grays who are more biological and more robotic, and then the robot sleeves of biological grays, and we're just encountering their robot sleeve proxy.
Yeah, I've had different recountings over the years of different classes of the ETs. It's sometimes difficult to nail them all down because we have the tall whites and the reptilian Draco and the grays. The negative ETs seem to have run things while I guess what we would call the positive ETs have honored and respected our sovereignty, our right to make a choice, more or less.
Well, part of it is, and a lot of people, they look at it and they're like, what the heck? That doesn't look like any kind of choice. And the thing is, they have to realize that it's complicated. For one, Earth has been draconian turf for pretty much ever. They're the rightful owners of Earth, technically speaking, even though the Draco Orion Siakar reptilian empire has been fractured and no more for thousands of years. They're still fighting. They're different Draco factions. And so then you've got the Jahami or the Anunnaki, who they've
Right.
been here for a couple 100,000 years, exploiting and altering humanity and throwing off the original genetic experiment to nerf us so that they can more efficiently exploit us to mine gold. Okay. But they're largely being cleaned up off this planet along with the Draco and the negative grays. And as humanity begins to regain our sovereignty and we clean up our own swamp down here, it enables the positive galactics to be able to reveal themselves more and more, which they already have done up in our skies and making individual contacts with people all around the world for decades now. They're coming out more openly and in earnest. And this is where we really are on the threshold of full disclosure, not from the top down, because the Pentagon, did a
Yeah.
press conference, but really from the bottom up, the whole tsunami of testifiers, survivors, whistleblowers, the documentation, and all that. And what I see is right now a very cooperative administration that's doing what they said they were going to do.
Yeah. It
Because
makes
they
you
released all
think,
these files so far. Yeah.
right? What happens when Elon finally hits the vein? I think he's already almost there in terms of hitting the vein on the financing. They're finding, um, yeah, auditing the Treasury right now that they don't have Treasury disbursement numbers for billions and billions of dollars. It's like, WTF, dude?
What they basically looks like, it was giant slush funds for who everyone and their mom, everyone's in on the party as long as they keep their mouth shut. And they've got, if you can think of the pretzel twisting efficiency fund, then hey Joe, you've got we've got some Treasury Department checks coming your way, and then do this for us. And that's basically how it works, probably.
Obviously, it's not lost on me, and we predicted this 2 years ago that we would see this flap. I just pulled a journal entry out from my guides who I haven't even talked about this yet, but I'm going to put a show out where I'm going to discuss this more. That in February 14th of 2023, my guides started talking to me about the fact that you would begin to see increasing numbers of aircraft within the skies. And it's dated and file dated on my computer. Um, like a lot of things, didn't get released in that time because of the fact that I was ill. And the logistics of it were that it was an incomplete communication, but that part of the communication stayed inside of the logs. So, what started happening over the summer, what basically took us through the entire concourse of the fall season going into the election and then even post election into the post winter solstice period is that we're just loaded with reports all over the alternative media about these mysterious craft, which they're calling drones.
So what's happening is like yourself getting heads up before the main worldwide sightings of UFOs all over the world, not just the New Jersey drones. And we'll get to that, Randy. Is that we had also had our friends at the Farsight Institute with Courtney
Yeah.
Brown in their boardroom meetings. They were told, I believe it says it was November 13th, 2024, there would be these worldwide sightings. November 15th, they broadcasted that boardroom meeting. And then November 18th, the worldwide sightings. So you were given ahead of time this information as a contactee. And the reason why you've got the New Jersey drone hubbub is because while you've got the positive galactics revealing themselves worldwide, the negative cabal derp state, the loser-farians, I like to call them, the ones running 99% of the media, they they don't want people to realize what's going on. They don't want us to be accustomed to seeing positive UFOs and ETs in our skies and having an understanding that, wow, our friends are here. They don't mean us any harm. They're just hovering without doing anything but blinking at us nicely. And so what they'll do is they'll send up their own negative SSP craft, reverse engineered stuff, and high-tech drones, and they'll spray people and they'll focus on New Jersey, and then they'll try to make it go away. And that's kind of where we were up until the end of the previous administration. And then now there's so much excitement and positive motion with what this current administration is doing that they've already also had Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna, I think,
Yeah.
announce that she may be, on behalf of the current Trump administration, releasing documents in regards to ETs and UFOs.
So we had the congressional hearings that occurred over the summer, the Senate hearings, where we basically saw a number of high-level whistleblowers. Are these guys coming really from the inside? Are they part of a kind of a flak campaign? I mean, my sense of that's sort of,
So it's a mixture because you're going to have people in the Pentagon, and other people have pointed this out. I forget who, and like Dr. Courtney Brown. You go to one wing of the Pentagon, they say, oh, yes, there's something there. UAPs, non-human intelligences, they're real, and there's something there. That's pretty much sure as much as they'll generally tell you, but that's that one wing. Then you go to another wing of the Pentagon, and they'll say, oh, no, there's no such thing. We don't know nothing, right? So I think it's kind of a mixture of you got these dueling groups within these agencies and in our society. Some want truth, some don't. Sometimes they're working together more or less uncomfortably. And then they also, unfortunately, I think they had Dr. Stephen Greer put in a bad message there where they asked him at the end of the one Pentagon or with the one press conference with David Grush. They said, Dr. Greer, what do you think? And he said, I think there are no bad ETs. We humans, we're the bad ETs. And to
yeah,
me, it's like, wait a second, we've got deep underground bases, we've got negative Grays, negative Draco, many more negative types than that, but those are kind of the most immediately important ones to
yeah.
humanity's future.
Abductions, hybrid type experiments apparently going on.
Exactly. So to say, oh, there's no such thing, it's like that's when they asked Lou Elizondo on one of
Yeah,
these YouTube podcasts, is it BS? Look into it more, or save it for another day. And when they asked him, well, Lou, what do you think about deep underground military bases? He shook his head, and said BS. It's
yeah,
like, what? How can you say deep underground military bases are BS? And so you were talking about ufology at the beginning of the show, in your intro. It's like we're in ufology 2.0 new earth is what I'd like to
yeah.
say. Like now more of us are being able to step out, meet up with each other, not get eliminated or otherwise neutralized. We can call on our friends who are skilled remote viewers, psychic mediums, channelers, QHHT, quantum hypnosis healing technique practitioners, who are all working together so we can use our discernment truly to gather the data and then start to vet it all and then understand like what's really going on, and then I'll take that to the public.
It feels to me like what you just described, that we're in a reset in terms of ufology itself. And right away, we have to deal with the etymology that we have to deal with, because along with Lou Alessandro, To the Stars, um, and the current military realignment, we were given a new term, UAPs, which is ambiguous, murky, and non-defining as any term could be. It's typical military jargon designed to disengage rather than engage the frontal argument of something being there. It almost feels to me like a dismissive term. So if I use UAP, I generally will slash it with UFO first, because I'm not rejecting the UFO terminology. By the same token, it does feel like a reset. It feels like in this 2.0 era that we've entered into, and I'd say we've been in it for a couple of years, probably, and that in all likelihood, we are just entering into the deep of positive disclosure. And what would positive disclosure look like? Uh, well, that's the goal of your organization. Vision board that a little bit for us.
Well, basically, it's when you have enough people coming out with cogent, coherent testimony that all cross correlates in terms of where the secret underground bases are, who the Colonel Michael Aquinos and Preston Nichols, and the abusers are and
Yeah.
were in the programs, and who's funding them with which agency and which private corporations, and we're naming names. It starts to help open the floodgates for more and more people to come out and link up with each other and work with each other, get their healing, regain their memories. And then what I advise everyone do if they're an experiencer some way or how is first you write out your chronology, kind of like a Wolverine timeline. It might even have time travel. You might have branching parts of your timeline, but have it your chronology, when you were born, when you were first abducted through the talented and gifted program at your high school by the people in white vans or whatever. I'm hearing a lot of
Right.
those.
Project Talent. Yeah.
Right. Talented and exactly. And
You bring
after
up the,
you
you had to bring up the white vans. Oh my. There's a
they are a
memory.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are a thing. And after you've written up your chronology, you want to write up in plain English, a page or two summarizing, okay, your chronology and the who, what, when, where, and why of the stuff. And then, given your chronology and summary, everybody should have their individual demands, which is like they may name individual people who abuse them and what programs they want revealed. And they might have specific individual demands, like they were promised monies for their hard service and everything they've been put through, X, Y, and Z. And then everyone in general should have the common movement demand for full disclosure of the good, the bad, and ugly, the revelation of all the secret technologies that have been suppressed thanks to things like the 1951 Military Secrecies Inventions Act. I forget the name of it exactly, but it's where they literally said, hey, US government, it's okay to wipe out people coming out with free energy etheric technology.
Yeah. Yeah, we lost a lot of technologists along the way, didn't we? People who were pioneers in energy, the water engine, and um, various free energy technologies that were appropriated, stolen. Um, you brought up the white vans, which was really triggering for me because I have memories of that as well. The 20-year and back program. I mean, what are you going to do to compensate somebody for that? How much overtime do you accrue on a 20-year and back thing when the time itself that actually elapsed in the real world is not 20 years, but was 20 years within the uh, Frankenstein chrono world? of the secret space program and the ability to breach the time-space barrier.
Well, and what happens when you've got multiple clones and alters out there, or alters populating clones running around out there doing their own 20 and backs? And so, well, the reality is that once all this technology and stuff is unveiled, humanity really will have the resources to compensate everybody properly, I believe, some way, somehow. And we need a whole top-down, bottom-up revamp of our society anyway. And so I believe that,
Yeah.
We have replicators, med beds, free energy, anti-gravity, portal technology. A lot of the things that were as like too expensive or too difficult, a lot of that really does melt away. The real challenge is humanity's spiritual development and evolution.
There we go. The golden center of everything. The thing that they can't keep away from is the fact that humanity as a whole is undergoing an awakening.
That's right. They can't stop it because we literally are entering into the age of Aquarius, where the solar system around the eighth spiral arm is literally rotating into a region of space that's higher energy.
Yeah.
And it's burning away the darkness, and it's helping to activate a lot of our dormant abilities locked up in our so-called junk DNA. And a lot of the darker, lower vibration illusions and distortions are likewise being fried out and burned away.
And so if you look at the state right now we have the opposite of a witness protection program in ufology. We have a witness exposure program that constantly places those who dare to come out and disclose in a hall of shame sort of thing, where they're treated as crazy, they're treated as being probably worthy to just be locked up. I know some of the people that you've worked with. You mentioned Penny Bradley, for instance, and I've had conversations with Penny over Facebook numerous times. And I mean, the core of people that are out there, first off, let me say this. If you're an experiencer, you're the body of evidence that proves the UFO alien scenario. They're saying we don't have proof. The proof is in the body. The body holds the evidence, as the famous book on somatic healing goes. And unfortunately, instead of being placed in a protection program that would enable them to safely both discharge the negative aspects of this and heal, these people were forced into the public arena via social media to try and bring their truths forward. And except for a small inside audience, they're mostly treated as being completely wacko. So our standpoint is much like what your group's doing, trying to tell people, look, we will believe you. You're not crazy. We know that these experiences are valid because we have numbers. We have all kinds of numbers of people that have disclosed. Just on this show alone, in the 20 years that I've done this show, we brought forward enough record of evidence to at least cause what you would call a coroner's post-mortem on this thing, if it were dead, and it's not. The fact of the matter is that it's never stopped. The programs have never stopped.
That's right. My understanding is not only they're still going, there are people who are being taken to this day. What I'm hearing, and I'm very hopeful and optimistic, what I'm hearing is that just like down here on Earth, the swamp is being drained in places where we need to drain it. The same type of process is happening upstairs in the secret space programs as well. And Space Force was part of that process going back to 2016, because apparently the white hats began to form like an Earth alliance. They'd already had one. They tapped where they approached Trump in 2014 to ask if he would run 2016 to sign in the executive orders to help restore the constitutional republic of the United States of America. And so we've been seeing a lot of that ever since. And, I think that over time, the secret space program will be reformed, just like down here on the ground. More and more evidence is going to come forth. I mean, we already have everyone from Phil Schneider with his deep underground and tunnel system map and base map to, Alex Collier in 93 talking about the Draconians, to Bob Lazar talking about Element 115, 20 years ahead of time, to, the Gary McKinnon hacks, to all the
Yes.
1943 Philadelphia experiment stuff. So it's not to all the MK Ultra stuff and documentation on that and the CIA programs and Project Stargate. So it's not to say that this isn't documented. It's harder when you deal with individuals coming forward, but even they are coming forward with this the testimony and the facts and things that generally only one would know if they experienced or was at a particular base, and they're giving these details. So there's the movement is in full swing, especially with the worldwide UFO sightings. Last year, I was telling my mother and my one brother, Jason, hey, I'm going to be throwing an ET UFO conference, okay, in July.
Uh-huh.
And Jason laughed at me, UFOs, and kind of stormed off.
Yeah.
And the year wasn't even over. We got worldwide UFO sightings. So we're being vindicated every day. Every day it's like we're batting 1,000 us conspiracy realists. And, if you want to, now is a great time to bet people, because a lot of this stuff, it's okay. You want to bet out the JFK assassination? Oh, here are the files. RFK, MLK, this is the theft in the Treasury Department, the IRS. I can't wait for when they do the Pentagon, obviously.
Yeah.
The 2.1
9/11.
trillion. Yeah.
I did exactly. That was really the tip of the iceberg right there when Rumsfeld announced the missing 20 billion, wasn't it? Was it 20 billion?
2.1 trillion.
2.1 trillion.
Trillion.
That's more
Yes.
zeros than I care to think about.
Yep. Exactly. And I mean, just think $2,100 billion. And a lot of that money went into apparently the secret space programs and the deep underground military bases. And so not only did they get to cover up the SSP, that was one of their big timeline marker events to try to railroad us down to the negative transhumanism matrix timeline instead of the more positive Christed new earth timeline, which we are all on right now.
I need to think about that for a minute, because it does feel like a different era to me, Brian. I've waited my whole life for this, and I'm gobsmacked that it's taken this long. I really thought that we would be further along at this point in my life, and very much, I'm not going at this from a political standpoint. I'm going at it I'm on the side that's in favor of disclosure. On the side that's in favor of opening this whole thing up. The incredible waste that this has all been to the American people, not just the American people, the governments of planet Earth. Obviously, we're not in this alone. This is a planetary operation.
Absolutely.
Including the Chinese.
Some of the Chinese. So you got different factions.
Chinese. Yeah, well, there's different. Yeah, I agree. I wasn't finger pointing the Chinese particularly.
Well, but that's good. I mean, they're powerful. So with China, my take is that the Chinese Communist Party has been taken over by the Rothschild cabal, New World Order WEF types, and that's why they're trying to implement the 15-minute cities and the pandemic policies and all of that. That's not Marxism or Maoism. That's New World Order, playbook all the way through, and that deep state of China was also trying to take over the United States. At the same time, you're going to have elements in China, more of the positive dragon families, who they want the best for China and their people and the humanity and the world, just like here in the US. And then you're going to have the Cold Warriors who wants to nuke them all, right? And you're going to have both that, just like both wings in the Pentagon and everything in between.
Yeah. I mean, what is it about the capitalist communist Chinese Communist Party? When you look at it, it violated everything that traditional pillars of communism were brought together on. Not that that was a good thing, but there was an altruistic side to communism that, if had been marketed properly, could have been a positive footprint. But unfortunately, totalitarian. Hello, we've got. That's okay. You're a
I got a lot of
guest.
puppy dogs here at my house.
You're a guest. We welcome our canine friends.
Yeah, well, the thing is,
Seemed very interested in what was going on there.
oh, I've got steak up here on the desk, Marlon.
Oh, that doesn't help at all.
Yeah. Let's see. Well, you're saying well, the thing is, I mean, this is kind of more getting into political theory, but with the
It is.
disclosure move, the disclosure slant to it. Let's put it like that. Coming from a Chinese American, um, you studied a bit about this, the Chinese revolutionary movement, because a bit of my own family history is tied up into that, and
Yeah.
we ended up the Tseng family getting here to the United States. Um, First of all, we've never had quote unquote pure Marxism, because that's a
No.
very 3D matrix term. Because behind the scenes of Marx to Lenin to Stalin to Mao and Fidel and all of them, you've always had the Illuminati cabal derp state pulling the strings. So it'd be one thing if these were true grassroots, Marxist Leninist revolutions and movements on their own. But when you realize that you've got these sinister forces behind the scenes manipulating things to a much higher degree over a much longer span of time, then you start to get into a more 4D, 5D analysis, or you talk about the 5D
Yeah.
chess game.
Yeah. That's kind of why I kind of pulled you into that conversation, because your own background sort of lends credence to what we understand and don't understand culturally about the great Chinese people. And we want nothing but the best for the Chinese people, for the Chinese people's prosperity. And as I said, they weaponize everything. All ideologies get weaponized, including ufology. Ufology has been weaponized. That's why I was talking earlier, about some of the gray whistleblowers that we see, like Alessandro. And the unfortunate statement that Greer made about there's no negative ETs is beyond the pale in terms of anybody that's experienced any of this. The act of taking someone is in itself, whatever the purpose and intention, done under color of a law that was enacted behind the scenes on a military base, and a contract that was signed behind the back of the U.S. chief executive himself, Eisenhower. And we've lived through 75, nearly 80 years of that being allowed. And it's like there's a law of permission which says that the minor, the person who's underage, is a person who must be spoken for. Therefore, permissibly, the government was able to take into account that they consider the general populace to be their offspring. Let's put it that way. And
Right.
that
Instead of a
speaking,
ward, they turned us into their test subjects.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, lab rats.
Yeah, and it wasn't pretty. It's not pretty. The thing is, when it comes to the abduction phenomena, it seems like, and Penny Bradley, among others, and Audrey Walters have spoken to this. If you're taking, let's say, Randy, you are a star seed of Palladian origin, maybe the Kitai lion, tiger people. Okay, they're tiger humanoids, and you've incarnated down here on Earth in a human body, and they decide to, because you're one of their people incarnated here on Earth, they can now send a ship to visit you and beam you up either in the physical or in the astral or etheric, and do work on you and monitor you,
Yeah,
maybe even put an implant into you to help track you in case you get abducted by the negative forces. Now, once you've been visited by your positive galactic ET starseed family, you now have come under the radar of the negative secret space program factions. And then now your next time you get taken, it might not be a pleasant abduction. And a lot of people they're so confused because they mix both phenomenon together.
Yeah.
And really it's separate phenomenon happening to the same people for, coherency of reasons, but it's confusing if you don't know what's going on from a more higher level view.
That's why it's so important for the people that you work with to speak out and to be heard and to be given platforms to speak out. Because the more data we put on the table, the bigger the picture becomes. It's like building a jigsaw puzzle, the 5D jigsaw puzzle. As I always like to say, the body of evidence is in the body of those who are experiencers.
We're all in the movement together. Like you've been doing this for 20 years and I might not look 49, but would I lie with this hairline? You know? And so we indeed, but we've been all been waiting for this all of our lives, and it's coming to fruition. It's becoming much more mainstream. The chuckle factor is starting to go away. It's becoming more of a shrill minority instead of a 9 out of 10 thing. The more and more experiencers are coming out talking about, like, the more people out there who are familiar with terminology like the 20 and backs, the 40 and backs, and etc., and basically the time travel and secret space program terminology, the more it's just going to become in the public zeitgeist, and that will in turn not only help us down here as a society and increase the human level of consciousness, knowing that yes, we're not alone. This is the exopolitical intergalactic setup, but also it then affords our positive ET friends the ability to reveal themselves and do more and more without violating the Prime Directive. But they've really kicked it off by being in our skies all at once, all over the world.
Now, the incredible thing is that, yeah, they were all over the world. This wasn't just New Jersey. And this is the spectacles that the media put on this whole thing, is to basically state, well, these were sightings in New Jersey. And no one will argue that embedded within the spectacle of what we were seeing, for instance, in New Jersey, there were, in fact, military drones and probably private drones as well in the mix. And I think Courtney Brown would agree with that as well, that we're seeing a mix of different things, because why wouldn't we, after all? It's what I call chaff. The
Right.
the floating of artifices in order to discharge energy from the legitimate.
Absolutely. And he does agree. I brought up that exact point with him on Robert Khalil's Typical Skeptic podcast, and he absolutely agreed that, yeah, you're going to have the negative ET and human factions. They're going to fly their own drones and craft and chaff, if you will. And then, that in a lot of cases we're spraying noxious types of sprays that were making people and animals sick. And then they're going to focus the camera on that, and they're going to in New Jersey, and then they're going to ignore, and they're going to call them drones, not even UAPs, as you pointed out earlier, and much as the fact that acknowledging that these UFOs or craft are all over the world at once.
What's the thing that surprises you the most about what you've learned as a result of doing these different conferences? I know that's a hard question to ask. I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
No, that's a great question. I'd say how multidimensional we all are as beings. How many of us, many more than we know, or probably been part of these programs and exploited some way, somehow. Because at the end of the day, human DNA and just trafficking, that's like the biggest black market, not just worldwide, but apparently galactically.
Yeah.
Because human
Human DNA.
and labor is very highly valued.
I'm sorry, I interposed myself on your thought there because I said human DNA. You were talking labor. And
Well, both, because
both.
you
Yeah,
you you take the DNA and then you splice it into a being, and then you create something that can do whatever dirty work or menial labor that you want it to do, or you're even, be a sex slave in some cases. And apparently that's part of the human ET hybridization. They've been trying to make these cat people that that are kind of like used as sex slaves. It's terrible to say, but that apparently is a thing with the Interplanetary Corporate Conglomerate, the ICC. And that's these breakaway corporations that are, a lot of them are based on Mars and other planets.
so the body of evidence is the body, and we need to get more bodies to give evidence.
Yep.
That's
And
really
speaking,
the long and short of it, is to make for a friendly environment. I really am. I can't pull your website up right now because I'm full screen on the
oh,
video.
it's okay. Full disclosure
Yeah,
movement.org.
this is actually a good place to give this. We're
Yeah.
bumping up on the first hour,
Awesome.
and we'll put
Yeah.
all the links in together. I was going to screenshot it to throw up on screen, but I didn't get a chance to do that either. Still getting my sea legs back into broadcasting. So, dominant theory today that we are living in this bubble is bursting. The concept of normal. Gosh, I grew up in the tailwind of the 1950s. I was born in 1954. So I remember the 1950s. I remember the 1960s as a child. And obviously, I came of age and kind of grew up in the 70s. And one of the things that surprised me the most is how I think the world really is ready for this. I was given this book that was uncomfortable. Can you see that?
Yes, yes, I can. American Cosmic by D.W. Pasulka.
Yeah, Diane
UFOs,
Pasulka.
D.W. Pasulka, okay. UFOs, Religion, and Technology.
This was given to me in one of my earliest sessions with my current therapist, who was beginning to realize she didn't have a normal patient. And she said that her sister had given her this book. I'll throw it up again. We've invited Diane Pasulka to come on the show. We haven't gotten a response, but she's very busy. Highly recommend this book, though. Imagine being in therapy with somebody, and I've interviewed my therapist live on the air, very normal person who, at the same time, when I'm talking about trauma, and I'm thinking to myself, how do I breach this? How do I even begin to, we're only now beginning to discuss it. The trauma involved with abduction, the trauma involved with being an experiencer. Because even if you're a positive experiencer, your body, your mind, and your spirit have experienced something that no one prepared you for. And I think this is oftentimes even lost on experiencers. Nobody trained us for this. When you think of a child 3 years old being pulled into a craft and taken, a child 6, 7 years old, even 14, 15 years old, nothing in our reality aligns with this except that this, in one sense, is kind of normal for us, which means that we submerge it, which means it becomes a pathology and not a healthy type of expression. And so there's a need in this field for people who understand the psychology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because most people in mental health, they hear a patient talking about, breakaway civilizations and 20 and back time travel and alters and clones, and they're going to figure out how they can get the person institutionalized.
Yeah.
what's happening now,
Medicalized.
medicalized. What's happening now is a lot of people more in the alternative medicine and the experiencer and the spiritual communities are working with the people who have been in these programs and abducted, military abductees and things like that, and doing a lot of that healing work outside of the traditional mental health system, which
Yeah.
never ever really served our community well at all.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
Whether you're talking about people dealing with voice to skull or real telepathic communications with beings high and low vibration frequency, to actual, cases of demon possession, as opposed to your more neurological, bipolar schizophrenia.
We're redefining that all the time anyway. I mean, schizophrenia has been redefined, MPD has been redefined, DID, dissociative identity disorder. Um, we're now merging into the field of ritual cult abuse as well, which takes us into MK Ultra and aligned programs, Monarch programs and such. You were talking earlier about the breeding of sex slaves, and that feeds right into Monarch and what it was used for in terms of producing operatives that were sexually, we'll say, submissive, sexually
Yeah, yeah.
used.
Well, because that's part of it is the beta kitten sex programming, but then because it's Monarch Corporation, and they've got nasty, they've got bad ideas for how they want to take humanity down the transhumanism timeline because they're part of the negative agenda. They also give people Delta assassin killer programming. And then they'll also layer in some psychic remote viewing training. That's actually one of probably the first things that, they start with psychically and other psionics, depending on the operative or asset they
Mm.
call them, or
Yeah.
us. And then they will then throw in as their cherry on top, the Omega self-destruction programming to help keep everything quiet.
That we know about because we've interviewed Omegas on this show before. And we know that the Omegas basically have a programmed self-destruction mode. It may not be suicide. It may be drugs. It may be violence. It may be some sort of suicide mission. But in fact, that's programmed into them that they don't live enough. And there is another visitor.
Yeah, well, because the whole idea of the Omega suicide programming is if you start to spill the beans as an asset, you're getting your memories back, you're starting to talk to members of the press or writing a book and going to a conference circuit, to present your testimony, and you're going on podcasts, then the whole point of the Omega programming isn't just to stop you from testifying. In the most extreme cases, it's to have you take out anyone who you told enough of your testimony
Mhm.
to, and then yourself. And so apparently this has been cases where you've got a patient who not only do they commit suicide, they go on a murder killing spree before committing suicide, taking out a lot of members of their family, their friends, and their therapists before turning the gun on themselves.
That's diabolical. So let's talk a little bit, Brian, about the conferences themselves and how they distinguish themselves. I had, I have not been to a UFO conference in probably since, well, any kind of conference since about 2018 or so. 2017, I believe, was the last conference I was at. And got to be honest with you, man, weird shit goes on at these conferences. I did a conference in Houston where I was basically the host for the large conference room. And I got to tell you something, it was off the wire what was going on. I mean, we had literally, I was abducted there. We had a robot Uber driver who kidnapped us for about 6 hours and drove all over Houston acting like he was lost. Yeah, instead of taking us back to the hotel. Yeah,
6 hours?
6 hours.
You didn't get on the phone and call 911 at that point?
I got on the phone and called the hotel to try and get somebody to call this Uber driver back because it was hired by the people who hosted the the uh, the event.
Oh, you mean it was literally a robot Uber? It wasn't, there's
Yeah.
no human driving it, and
No,
you
there
couldn't
was a
get,
human driving it, but the
what?
human became increasingly worthless. I
Right.
literally
They could
traveled
have been a
the,
mind controlled human, is what
it
that
was a
sounds like.
mind controlled human, is what it was.
Literally, and I've heard this type of testimony before, so it's not beyond the pale.
This driver literally needed to be shaken. At one point, because there was several of us in the cab, we just decided that we may have to hostile take over the van that he was driving. That's how bad it got.
Exactly. I mean, 6 hours is crazy. That's like a plane flight across the country.
It's longer than my plane flight was to Houston.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was quite an experience.
Well, so at our conference, like all conferences, and in the spirit of full disclosure, sure, are we going to have attention? Can we get voice to scold or psychically attacked or time travel? Sure.
Yeah,
Can they do it?
absolutely.
Can they do it every night to you in the comfort of your own bedroom? Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the idea isn't to, avoid the conferences in our case, and I'm going to say especially in our case, because the whole mission of the 2024 and now 2025 and going forward, full disclosure now conference series is to get the testimonies out for the most powerful testimonies that are need to be heard by these whistleblowers and survivors, to basically blow the gates wide open on disclosure. And we're all about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there are some conferences where they prefer people don't go too much into the dark stuff, the ritual abuse stuff, especially, which unfortunately is part and parcel of all these space
Yeah, it
programs right
is.
now.
Yeah.
Not a single one of them doesn't involve mind control. And so there's a lot of reform and overhaul that's going to need to take place. And the people who had to suffer the nasty versions of these programs should be the first in line to be able to help determine how they're reformed and restructured and put to use for humanity instead of to enslave all of us.
Is the day coming when we're going to be able to safely operate inside of some sort of safe space where we're actually heard? I mean, like, we're not looking for the government to do disclosure, but ultimately, the blowback from this is so huge on the government that if they let it get away, they've lost the argument forever.
And
How
that's
do you
pretty much what's
envision
happening.
that?
Well, that's pretty much what's happening, and that's where this current administration is so disruptive. I kind of put them in a different category than all the previous administrations. Going back to JFK getting holes in his head for his troubles. Okay, so this is the first administration where us white hat civilians and SSP experiencers and contactees, we're creating our safe spaces with our podcasts and radio shows like yours here, and our conferences and the travel tours and contact at sea cruises, done by like Margie K and the Unex Network and people like that. Um, I give a shout out to the Journey to Truth guys, Aaron and Tyler. And also my friend Rion de Rouen, who's doing the Rise of the Guardians event, coming up at the end of March here.
Wow,
Um, yeah, so there's
sounds
a lot of
interesting.
stuff, like people are emerging. We're on the scene, to get tickets to my event and to get more information, and to also get the recording from last year's live stream of both the main stage and also the recording of the second stage. It's 4 days and nights of material. It's all found at fulldisclosuremovement.org. And that's where you can get the tickets and information for booking your stay at the lovely Serrata Beach Resort for our event coming up this July, July 15th to 18th. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then there's more. We have a free sister event, Day of Being 5.0 Beach Weekend. It's in their fifth year. It's like 1,000 we'd expect or more light workers and star seeds and psychics and healers gathering on nearby Indian Shores Beach that weekend. And we even got the Serrata Beach Resort to extend their conference rate discount for people staying at the resort, not just for our conference, but also for the weekend for our sister event too. So it's an amazing value. The tickets are very, very affordable. The resort, especially with the discounts, affordable. If you want, you can split the room with people because we have two queen size beds per room. So people are linking up and finding roommates. And now you cut your stay in half, if you're coming as a single person. We have couples rate tickets because I like to give the discount for people coming as groups. 18 and under, you get in free as long as you're with a responsible guardian.
Cool. That's very cool. And again, one more time, that website.
FullDisclosureMovement.org. It's this July in St. Pete Beach, Florida. And Randy, I'm happy to comp your pass if you're able to join us and give you a table space so that you can broadcast Off Planet Radio live from St. Pete Beach.
Wow, that's very generous. I hope maybe I'll be able to travel by then. I'm still recovering, and flying isn't in my picture right now, but I do appreciate that. Hate to let you go because it's such an interesting conversation. We're sort of in the extended part of this right now. And I wanted to make sure that you got your information out there. St. Petersburg is a beautiful place to go. People should just go there. By the way, if you get a chance while you're there, do go to the Salvador Dali Museum in St. Petersburg. It's well worth the trip. And I used the trip in little hooks because going to see Salvador Dali artwork is a trip. And I think he was one of us.
He played both sides from what I can tell.
He
There's that
did,
because of that
deftly.
famous photograph of him holding what looks to be a Vril type, I
Or
forget, type 1, 2, or 3 lizard, and the victim behind him in a bed in a
okay, I
hospital smock,
remember this.
bandaged
Yeah,
up. That
yeah,
that was it looks like he Vril droned that person and then took a photo to memorialize it and then put it in all of our faces to figure out 50 years later or however
right.
long.
Well, he worked with Disney as well. People don't realize that Disney and Dali worked together on a film project. I don't think it ever came to full fruition, but Dali and Disney were very closely aligned in terms of working that network. So, I mean, you have that. We'll leave Disney for another subject entirely. But St. Petersburg is beautiful. That region of Florida is particularly beautiful. Clearwater, I'm familiar with the area, and it is just a beautiful place to go and hang out. Anything you'd like to bring up?
I'd love to be back here to discuss more about the knowledge that I've gotten from people like Penny Bradley and John Whitberg, Daryl James, and so many others about the breakaway civilizations, the time travel, different time travel missions people have been on. That
We can accommodate them, even coming on with you maybe and doing that
Yeah,
as kind of
I'd love
a
to. I can bring
co-guest
people
thing.
on.
Yeah, I would totally love that because there's a whole new group of people that some of you're going to have James Bartley there as well, my buddy James Bartley,
James Bartley is I believe a secret space program experiencer as well as
my
definitely
labs.
contactee in ET in my lab, ET contactee, and he really is an expert on reptilians.
He is.
Yeah, because he has telepathic communication with various groups, I believe.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got a lot on your plate, brother, in terms of what you're doing. You're on the West Coast. You're in California. Are you in California?
Well, my phone is a California cell phone
Got it.
area code because I used to live in San Francisco for 20 years,
Okay.
but with the whole fake medical phenomenon that hit us in 2020, I fled to northern Nevada. So that's where
Got
I with
it.
my wife and our baby daughter and our business partners.
Yeah, there was a great migration out of California, wasn't there? Yeah,
Oh,
my
it's gone downhill so bad. The California I knew 25 years ago was no more.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you can say one thing, it is that the pandemic changed a lot of things, including demographics and the quality of living for a lot of people. I mean, I love California. I loved LA. I've visited California several times, especially San Diego, LA. I've been up to Big Bear. Um, it's a beautiful place, and yet my heart goes out to the people that are living there, including the people who are caught up in the woke kind of thing that's going on, that's, allowed these wildfires to become so horribly destructive. And
Yeah.
my heart beats for these people.
It's criminal. It's criminal. Yeah, I left a lot of beloved people behind because I lived in Los Angeles for 7 years before the 20 that I lived in San Francisco. And so seeing the policies really misspend the money and mismanage everything to the point that, some directed energy weapons here, some arsonists paid off by the Soros Foundation over there, and then no water for the fire hydrants and fire department for LA defunded by $18.5 million 3 months prior. None of that's going to help. And then throw in the fact that Pacific Palisades and Malibu are such real estate, high desired zones, and smart cities and all that. Yeah, it's kind of like I'm glad I fled California when I did.
Well, I'll just put this on the table because I think my prayers for the people in California have been largely this, that the dewoking project process is already in play, and that you're going to see a California that's going to go back to where it once was, that the facade has come off of this sleep that washed over part of our population. Fortunately, not enough, at least in the last election, to tilt things into a terminal mode like we were looking at. I'm not being partisan. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I'm simply looking at it from the standpoint of what was the most disruptive. And there's no human being on earth more destructive too sometimes, Donald Trump and what he's brought to the table along with Elon and Bobby Kennedy Jr. and those. So this isn't like a political endorsement or anything. Observationally, I'm just watching what's going on right now, and I'm going, when's the last time a politician kept a promise? On day one. On day one.
Never.
Now,
Never.
I
This is the
don't.
fastest ever, and that's why he brought Elon on, and a lot of us in the community don't trust Elon. We're very suspicious of the AI and Neuralink, and some people have seen him at rituals. Maybe it was an altar of his. Who knows? Okay, but to the extent that he is tech support to the Trump administration to clean out the swamp, God bless him. I'm all for
Yep,
it. And,
that's the
and
way I look at it. Yeah.
yeah, and if they're misstepping and doing backwards steps, we're gonna shout and scream and call them out and work against that every misstep. But every positive forward step that we've all been praying for this whole time, I'm all applause.
Yeah, yeah, me too. And that's the extent of my political concerns about any of this, frankly. I mean, even beyond the economy, once people wake up and realize that given the breadth and scope of the secret space program and what they hold, we're infinitely wealthy. Money, and this is what they fear. They fear the loss of the control. It was very accurate and precise. I thought it was very sharp on your part to point out that once the paint starts coming off this thing, it's not going back on.
It can't, because there's too much being revealed. All the people, understanding what they were injected with. Maybe it's going to turn out that Fort Knox doesn't have all this gold, but maybe it might turn out that a lot of gold was repatriated from the Vatican. And so who knows? So I'm kind of 50-50 on that. And that the gold probably was stolen, but maybe other gold was put back into Fort Knox in its place. So I'm not sure yet. Um, the years ahead, I'm told, are going to be very frenetic.
Yep.
But it's better that we have the frenetic years compressed up front now instead of the slow drip over the next several decades, because then we won't be able to necessarily break free from the inertia that we have to. So it's very refreshing to see all this real shotgun motion off this current administration in the right direction. And in a recent interview, Trump with Elon, they're being interviewed together. I forget the name of the show, and he said that,
That was on Fox, yes.
yeah, it was on Fox. He said that, the whole point of getting a strong start to fulfill his promises from day one is so that he can continue the work for the rest of his term.
Yeah.
Yeah, not start it in the middle of the term and kind of get some stuff done and end the term and goodbye. That was not the plan.
I don't know how read in Trump and Elon both are. I suspect that Elon knows who's dangling the pendulum, but from my perspective, I don't think anyone's going into this blind. Trump knows something at the level that a president would know. And I'm pretty sure he got his instructions on what his talking points would be, but it looks like he's not taking instructions this time.
Well, I think what it was is during his first 2016 to 2020 term, he did want to speak about the Galactic Federation, and apparently they told him not to spill the beans.
Right.
And so he didn't. But now that he's come back after having the 2020 election stolen, it's all documented. He never left office. He's always been commander in chief. This is why he didn't put his hand on the Bible to be inaugurated this last January 20th. Okay, now they're cleaning out the swamp really in earnest by taking over all the backdoor systems, going back to like the Obama administration. Doge apparently is actually a rebranding of the Digital Government Service, DGS, I think it was called, that Obama installed to be a backdoor to take over all these agencies. And now this backdoor is being used to audit and then restore control to the American people for these same agencies.
That control can even considerably reaches into space at this point. That we are, in fact, closer than we can dream, I think, of learning a truth that's going to reveal something startling about our own existence. When you talk about things like the 20 and back program, you're talking about a technology that's so powerful that we can't fathom it because it comes from another world. And that pretty much, in my estimation, points towards a day when, we will have this come out. And all I can say is for your end, what you're doing, good on you guys. This is awesome. I'm looking forward to more conversations with you, more conversations with some of the people who are in your neck of the woods, so to speak, and continuing the conversation here on Off Planet Radio, because we're now in Disclosure 2.0. We'll agree on that.
Absolutely. And part of that would be me bringing on guests who can do live clairvoyant viewing, similar to remote viewing, but it's not blind in this case. People who are in telepathic contact with Sasquatch or Bigfoot, and they can channel like live on air and answer questions, do Q&A. Some people I know are in contact with Her Highness Rum Lamvaya or Vira. She's
Yes.
a positive Draco reptilian queen, or more positive as they go. And so you sound like you're familiar with her as well.
I saw that YouTube video that you
Yep.
did with the young
Okay.
lady.
Yeah,
Um,
Audrey Walters.
yeah, excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent stuff. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So we're going to do more, Brian, that's for sure. Let's close this out for tonight. We can go back to our individual pursuits. I know you kind of had a rush dinner for this schedule tonight, but I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, and I look forward to supporting you and your mission as well, along with your four-legged friends there.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
awesome. Always
Thank
love
you
to
so
see.
much, Randy.
Thank
It's
you
been a
so much.
pleasure.
Stay on the line for a minute. Let me close this out. That's going to close it for this time. We're going to be back with some more shows real soon. I am Randy Maugans. This is Off Planet Radio. The truth is out there. It's inside you. Now go find it. Peace out.
This is Off Planet Radio.